Kofi looked at my hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. As soon as he did, something amazing happened. A soft blue light surrounded both of us. I felt a tingling sensation all over my body. When the light faded, I gasped. Where my tail had been, I now had legs. Kofi's eyes widened in surprise. Then he smiled, a real warm smile that I had never seen before. "The sea has given you a new gift," he said. "Now you can truly live in both worlds." I was so excited that I almost forgot how to swim. Kofi helped me to the surface, where we found my mother in a boat, looking for us. She had woken up and found us both gone. When Amma saw us, her eyes grew wide. She looked at my new legs, then at Kofi, who was back in his human form. For a moment, I thought I saw a strange look pass over her face. Not surprise, but something else. But then she smiled and helped us into the boat. "What happened?" she asked, but her voice sounded odd, like she already knew the answer. As we were sailing back to the island, Kofi and I told Amma everything. We told her about Kofi being a sea demon, about my power to call sea creatures, and about the blue light that gave me legs. Amma listened quietly, nodding now and then. When we finished, Amma was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think it's time I told you both a story of my own." Kofi and I looked at each other, confused. What more could there be to tell? Amma took a deep breath and began. "Long, long ago, before this village existed, before even the oldest trees on the island were seedlings, I lived in the depths of the ocean. I wasn't human then. I was a powerful sea witch, ancient and full of magic." I gasped. Kofi's mouth fell open in shock. Amma continued, her voice taking on a dreamy, faraway tone. "For thousands of years, I watched the world above the waves. I saw humans come and go, building villages, fishing in the sea. At first I didn't care about them. They were so small, so short-lived compared to me. But as time passed, I grew curious. One day I decided to take human form and walk on land. I made myself look like a young woman and came to a village much like ours. The people there were kind to me, thinking I was a lost traveler. They gave me food and a place to stay. I was fascinated by their lives, how they laughed, cried, loved, and helped each other. It was so different from the cold, quiet depths where I lived. For the first time in my long life, I felt something new, loneliness. I wanted to be part of their world, to feel the warmth of human love and friendship. But I knew that as long as I was a sea witch, I could never truly belong. So I made a plan. Amma's eyes seemed to glow as she spoke, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I used my magic to seal away most of my powers. I made myself human, with only a small part of my magic left, just enough to help me swim well and sense things in the sea. Then I gave myself a new life and new memories. I became Amma, the girl who loved to swim. Kofi interrupted, his voice shaking. "But our whole life together, was it all a lie?" Amma shook her head. "No, Kofi. My love for you, for Meera, for our village, that was all real. Those feelings were why I chose to become human in the first place." She turned to me, her eyes soft. "Meera, my dear, when you were born with a fishtail, I was shocked. I thought my old magic had somehow affected you. I didn't remember being a sea witch then, but deep down a part of me knew you were special. I didn't know what to say. My whole life I thought I knew who I was, who my parents were. Now, everything had changed." "But why are you telling us this now?" I asked. "Why did you remember?" Amma smiled sadly. "When you got your legs, Meera, it broke the spell I had put on myself. All my memories came flooding back, and I realized that everything that's happened, Kofi coming to the village, my midnight swim, your birth, it was all part of a bigger plan." "What plan?" Kofi asked, his voice hard. Amma looked out at the sea, her eyes distant. "A plan to bring balance between land and sea, to create a bridge between two worlds." She turned back to us. "You see, long ago humans and sea creatures lived in harmony, but over time they grew apart. Humans forgot about the magic of the sea, and sea creatures became afraid of humans. I wanted to change that." "So you planned all this?" I asked, my head spinning. "You brought Kofi to the village knowing he was a sea demon?" Amma nodded. Yes, I chose Kofi because I could sense his power, even in my human form. I knew that together we could create a child who would be special, a child who could live in both worlds. Kofi's face was a mix of anger and confusion. But why didn't you just use your own magic? Why involve me? Amma reached out and took Kofi's hand. Because I wanted it to be real, Kofi. I wanted to live a human life, to fall in love, to have a family. And I did. Everything I felt for you, everything we shared, it was all true. I looked at my parents, trying to understand. So, what happens now? Amma squeezed my hand. Now, my dear Meera, you have a choice to make. You can use your gifts to bring humans and sea creatures together to restore the balance that was lost long ago. Or you can choose to live a normal human life. The decision is yours. As Amma finished speaking, the boat bumped against the shore of our island. We all sat there for a moment, the weight of everything we'd learned pressing down on us. Finally, Kofi spoke. I think we all have a lot to think about, he said quietly. Let's go home and rest. We can talk more tomorrow. Amma and I nodded. As we climbed out of the boat, I wobbled on my new legs. Kofi caught me before I fell. I've got you, he said softly. I looked up at him and saw tears in his eyes. Despite everything, he was still my father, and he still cared for me. We walked slowly up the beach to our house. As we reached the door, I turned and looked back at the sea. The water was calm now, shimmering in the moonlight. I thought about all the secrets it had held, a sea demon, a sea witch, and me, their daughter, born to bridge two worlds. As I drifted off to sleep that night, my mind was full of questions. What would I choose to do? How would the villagers react if they knew the truth? And what other secrets might be hiding beneath the waves? Little did I know, the biggest revelations were yet to come. The next morning, I woke up early. The events of the night before came rushing back, and for a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. But when I looked down and saw my new legs, I knew it was real. I got up carefully, still not used to walking. I made my way out of the house and down to the beach. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in beautiful shades of pink and orange. As I stood there, feeling the sand between my toes for the first time, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Amma. Good morning, Meera, she said softly. How are you feeling? I turned to look at her. In the soft morning light, she looked both familiar and strange. This was my mother, the woman who had raised me and loved me, but she was also an ancient sea witch, powerful beyond my imagination. I don't know, I said honestly. Everything's different now. I don't know what to think or how to feel. Amma nodded. I understand. It's a lot to take in. She paused, looking out at the sea. Would you like to know more? About who I was? About my plan? I nodded, both excited and nervous to learn more. Amma sat down on the sand and I joined her. She began to speak, her voice taking on that faraway tone again. As I told you last night, I was once a powerful sea witch. I lived for thousands of years in the deepest part of the ocean, in a grand palace made of coral and pearls. I had magic beyond anything you can imagine. I could control the tides, speak to every creature in the sea, even change the weather. But I was alone. The other sea witches and wizards kept to themselves, each ruling over their own part of the ocean. We rarely spoke to each other, and never to the surface dwellers. One day I saw a ship sink in a storm. The humans on board were drowning. Without thinking, I used my magic to save them, creating a giant bubble of air around their ship and guiding them to a nearby island. The humans were amazed. They left offerings on the beach for me, beautiful shells, shiny stones, even some of their food. I was touched by their gratitude. It made me curious about their world. So I started watching humans more closely. I saw how they lived, how they loved, how they worked together to build amazing things, and I realized that the sea and the land weren't so different. Both were full of life, of beauty, of creatures working together. But I also saw how humans and sea creatures were growing apart. Humans were forgetting the old stories about the magic of the sea. They were starting to see the ocean as something to be conquered, not respected. And sea creatures were becoming afraid of humans, hiding in the depths where ships couldn't go. I knew something had to change, but I also knew that I couldn't do it alone. As powerful as I was still an outsider to the human world. I needed to understand humans better, and I needed to create someone who could truly belong to both worlds. Amma turned to me, her eyes shining. That's where you come in, Meera. You are the bridge I hope to create. Half human, half sea creature, with the power to bring both worlds together. I sat there trying to take it all in. But why didn't you just use your magic to make peace between humans and sea creatures? Amma shook her head. Magic can't solve everything, Meera. Real change, lasting peace, that has to come from understanding, from love. That's why I became human, why I fell in love with your father, why I had you. I wanted the change to be real, to grow naturally. But Kofi, I said, remembering how angry my father had been. You didn't know he would try to scare the humans, did you? Amma looked sad. No, I didn't. When I became human, I locked away my memories and most of my power. I chose Kofi because I could sense his connection to the sea, but I didn't know he was a sea demon. His anger, his plan to frighten the villagers, that was all his own doing.